What's going on, ambitious vet? Thanks for diving into the trenches with us again this week. And if you're brand new, welcome home. This is where you're going to get the golden grenades or critical insights, depending on how you look at it, to break through to new levels of success, feelings of better life satisfaction and fulfillment in your everyday life post-military. Well, ambitious vet, what do we have today? Well, have you ever wanted to write a book, to tell a story, or maybe your story that, believe it or not, could impact hundreds, if not thousands of lives? Maybe even fight this isolation, suicidology that's happening within society today. If anybody knows that, it's you, a veteran, right? Who may have those thoughts as you're transitioning out and not feeling like anybody understands you, right? So for some of you that listen to this may be, 10 years ago, kind of like how I was getting out of the Marine Corps back in 2012. But regardless, what if you could have the opportunity to become an Amazon bestselling author within 90 days using a proven system that has created hundreds of best-selling veteran authors? If that sounds good, stay tuned.
So the hardest piece and most important piece of being self-employed is vulnerability. And especially when you were trained as a career to not be vulnerable, that can be a really tough one. But the night and day difference in that vulnerability, because we don't buy from people unless we know, like, and trust them.
Today's show is going to be brought to you by Audible. Ambitious Vet, if you're looking to stay connected and informed to relevant topics for your life, or maybe just trying to find an outlet daily while you're walking the dog, driving to work, or settling down for the day, I encourage you to try it out. Try it out like a bike and try a 30-day free trial with Audible, where you're going to be able to get 1 credit, 2 credits if you're a Prime member, and good for any premium selection titles you like. And it's yours to keep forever. The Audible Plus catalog includes podcasts, audiobooks, guided wellness, and Audible originals of thousands of titles that you can be listening on demand right now to either improve areas of your life that you're looking to become more valuable in, or just to improve yourself as a father. Like, I'm literally on my app right now scrolling through my library of content, and one of the books I have is from a retired Marine, an author, co-author actually, of The Expectant Father that I'm listening to right now as I look to welcome my first and my baby girl January 2nd. So regardless of what your intention is, we're all busy. If you're an ambitious vet, your probably only free time is drive time. If you're going to a networking event or to work, make sure to maximize that time at Drive Time University and consume content that's going to help you improve in your life and potentially even maybe change your attitude, because sometimes I listen to content that kind of shifts my attitude for the day, which keeps me on purpose, right? So regardless of everything I just said, with that said, I encourage you to go take advantage of a 30-day free trial on us. After that, if you see value, it's $14.95 a month after that. And they definitely do remind you that your 30-day free trial will be ending with a friendly email reminder, which is always good. But if you do want to try it out an extra month and get that continued content, you can cancel anytime. So the risk is very low. The only thing for you to do is decide that you want to be getting the content that you want to be receiving every single month that's going to help you either laugh more, become more, or hell, just keep you up to relevant topics in the world while you're driving from trusted sources. God only knows we need that, right? So the URL will be audibletrial.com/AV podcast. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/AV podcast.
It's time to get into the trenches, dig into your purpose, and fire up your life fulfillment. The Ambitious Vet Podcast starts now.
What's going on, Ambitious Vet? We are right back inside the trenches today with Steve Kidd. I met Steve at a Reform Networking event, I think about a month or two ago, and I got dumbfounded. Ambitious Vet, based just on his heart, centered around how to help veterans become best-selling authors, helping you, Ambitious Vet, elevate your impact in life post-military, and his unique system that's literally guarantees you getting your story out on paper to make the impact that you're committed to making. Steve has over 30 years of experience in business, sales, and marketing, and now he's given back to the veteran community to help us all become more in the trenches of life. Steve, are you there?
I am here.
Welcome to the Ambitious Vet Show, brother.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I love working with our veterans. It's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, now you weren't a veteran, correct?
No, my son is a veteran and my oldest brother is a veteran, but I myself am not now.
Right. So it really hits home, right? So, I like to call guests that come on the Ambitious Vet Show as patriots, right? Patriots that are committed to veterans becoming better. And usually patriots that are around veterans, helping them become better, usually have a family member, past history of generations that are inside their family. So it's great that you have that bloodline and your son is a veteran. Probably hits home, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, I live in Fallbrook, which all of the Marines listening absolutely know where that is. I'm right here by the gate to the east gate to Camp Pendleton. So it's kind of part of the DNA of my day-to-day life too.
Nice. So you're probably seeing them literally escape on Libo every single weekend, trying to create freedom and have some fun, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just about 2-3 times a week we get to hear mortar practice, because we're right here in sound zone of it. So it's in a way it's almost like I'm part of it even when I'm not.
Oh my God, that has to be intense. Talk about like PTSD for yourself at home, right? Just what's going on.
Right.
So let's go ahead and dive into some of the amazing work that you're doing, Steve. I mean, let's dive in first to why an Ambitious Vet story matters. Why does their story matter?
Well, and there's so many different reasons you could give for it, but the one that has been resonating with me so much lately is the lostness of what a veteran, when they were active duty, regardless of what their job was, what they went through, and a civilian just really, probably 99% of them don't really get it. You know what I mean? Whether it be stuff like the recent Afghanistan stuff, or, now there's a big thing about, I was actually even talking to an Army recruiter yesterday about his book, about mandating vaccinations and things like that. And there's so many nuances to it that people don't really understand. And we really do. And I always use this story, Chris. There's a gentleman that's, kind of a distant relative of mine through marriage, in fact, that is one of the people that was in the Civil War, served in the Civil War, and then after the Civil War moved out to what was then the Northwest Territory, and was one of the original founders of one of the very first cities in Washington. Wow. And in doing research in his life, literally there's a little, paragraph blurb, obituary, that the Masons, because he happened to be a Mason, kept. And if it wasn't for that, nobody would even know this guy. And I mean, majorly significant in not maybe the most important war, but definitely the most unique war that we've had in U.S. history. And, and then founding a whole, what ended up becoming a state. And, nobody knows anything about him. And the stories are so important. And civilians just don't get it. They live around comfortable with the comfort that they have no idea. They complain about really is the truth, and we don't want to get too political, but I mean, I have 6 kids, so I've heard a lot of the complaints on both sides of the fence.
Right. Yeah, but no, to your point though, right? It's your story matters, right? And I think a lot of veterans they want to kind of hide that underneath the blanket, you know, hypothetically speaking, they want to hide it underneath a blanket and be like, hey, that was my past. I don't want to tell you my demons. I want to just, be able to go through therapy or whatever it is to just go and move, right? So I mean, but sometimes telling your story can be very therapeutical though, right? Like just being able to open up, learning how to get it out there may heal more people. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think in fact, I'm working with another organization that we're talking about the concept of writing books for veterans that are suffering with PTSD and other emotional issues that are leading to the increased suicide rate, because some of it just needs to both be expelled, as well as, then a person needs to understand you're not alone, and also allowing the people that want so badly to help you but don't really know what you're going through to really know what you're going through. I mean, all of those different aspects of it. I did a book with General Kopchak, or Kopek, I'm sorry, that was the brigadier general in charge of all of the things at 9/11, the 20-year anniversary of 9/11.
Wow.
And it was really interesting to hear behind the scenes of things like the fact that the military readiness for it happened to be expedited by the fact that, with no information that there was going to be an attack on the Twin Towers, they happened to be having a nuclear drill that happened that exact day. And so they were, on high alert already, and I mean, it's just so many cool stories with so many veterans, and we could just go on forever, but they really do need to be told, and they really are beneficial to the writer as well as the reader.
Yeah, and you've definitely been making an impact. I know someone that's on our advisory board you actually worked with, and that book has been continuing to, become more and more of a bestseller on Amazon. So I know that you've been doing some really good work and hitting and helping our team become more impactful through your work and your offerings and stuff like that. But I want to kind of switch gears, right? Because also once you start learning how to tell your story, right? Once you start getting that vulnerable place where veterans, for the most part, we don't like going to, right? We don't like going to. It also can create more opportunities in your life once you start learning how to tell your story. Walk us through how sharing our story can actually create more opportunities in your life, career, or business.
So the hardest piece and most important piece of being self-employed is vulnerability. And especially when you were trained as a career to not be vulnerable, that can be a really tough one. But the night and day difference in that vulnerability, because we don't buy from people unless we know, like, and trust them. And that starts first from your bright, shiny smile, but then from you being willing to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I've been through this thing, and now I can help you with it because I understand where you're at. And that, more than anything, makes a huge, huge impact in really reaching the people that you're meant to serve.
No, that's a really good point, right? They don't know how to help you unless you can get really honest where you're at in your circumstances or situations or whatever. But also on the flip side of things, right? I mean, sometimes a book can help elevate what you got going on. If you are an ambitious vet that's been in the trenches of life, post-military, kind of got the career readiness thing down, you're kind of looking to elevate your thought leadership. Let's talk more around that realm of things too. Being an ambitious vet that has, financial career stability, however you want to call it, how do we elevate our positioning in the market that we're trying to become experts? How does a potentially an Amazon bestselling book, and it may be obvious, who knows, but for an ambitious vet that is listening to this, that wants to kind of hear the practical golden grenades with that, what would be, how does that position them more as a thought leader?
Absolutely. So the number one influencer credential, bar none, the number one influencer credential in the world is best-selling author. In fact, my medical doctors would be the first ones. I've got testimonials that will tell you, they've been a doctor in their field for 20 years and have gotten more notoriety, more company growth, all of that from being a bestseller than they have from the 20 years of practical, in the trenches experience. So there is in marketing, because ultimately I'm a marketing company. In marketing, I can tell you that I can never market you to the point that I can unless I have the product based off of a bestseller, the product, good, or service, and you being a best-selling author.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great brand promise there as well, right? And walk us through the unique process with doing that, right? Because you have a unique one that can kind of speed up someone's learning curve. And us vets, we're pretty well versed in like learning stuff pretty quickly, right? So walk us through that unique process of how you're able to go from day one to in 90 days, potentially. Obviously, the ambitious vet has to do the work, but how do you help them become that bestseller? What's your process like to help them get out there and
So the 90 days, and we can do it. I've actually done a book in as little as 3 days. In fact, I have a class now that I teach that is a virtual 3-day weekend where we will write, publish, and market your book to bestseller in that 3 days. And it works very impactfully. But the 90 days, that's a done for you program that I have. And all that is required on behalf of the veteran is to come to the table as themselves. We meet just like you and I are right now on Zoom. And I just have a conversation with them. It's directed, but every single time the person's like, does this make any sense? But, I know where we're going. We record all that. It's transcribed. In fact, the Zoom that I use has transcripts built into it. So it's being transcribed on the fly. And that transcript is going to be turned into what will be about 70 to 90% of the content for your book. So, in literally an hour and a half conversation, we can do the bulk of the writing of your book. And then I have grammar people and graphics people and things like that to do all of the rest of the heavy lifting. So there's very little writing required on your part. You just show up and be you.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Just show up, talk, and you guys are going to capture the goal. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. So I love the done for you aspect of it as well, because I have friends in my network and, some heavy hitters that actually listen to this show on a weekly basis. And one of their biggest things is it's always, man, one day I'm going to write that book, and they just do not know how to get off that ledge and write it. So it's like, okay, you guys use speak the talk, right? And it sounds like that's the kind of the process. So it's just like, it makes sense to do a done for you type process with someone that's trying to get off the ledge, trying to, write a book, doesn't know how to frame it out. It sounds like you guys do a great job as far as probing with questions to kind of figure out what are the key points of the book, stuff of that matter. But for an ambitious vet that's just like, man, one day, once I have X amount of cash in the bank or X amount of this, what would you say to that ambitious vet that's just like been pondering that book that probably would make an impact for thousands of people? What would you say to that ambitious vet?
So number one is somebody is waiting on you. There is someone that made a bad decision today, last week, last month, last year, and will continue to do so until you share with them what's going to be in your book. And it doesn't matter genre of the book. It could even be, when you're talking fiction books, the relaxation factor of that. So somebody needs that book. And until you write it, they're not going to get that need met. So that's number one. And I know especially veterans are very driven by a sense of honor and duty. And I feel like it really is part of our duty as people to fill the spot that we're created to be in this world. And so by not sharing, we're literally holding back something that we should be sharing. That's number one. Number two is that like anything, the only way to do it is just to do it. I think of so many things that are really terrifying the first time you do them, that as soon as you land on the ground or come up out of the water or whatever it might be, the first thing you really have going through your mind is, oh, that was so much fun, I want to do it again. You know what I mean? I mean, some of them not. Some of them are like, oh man, I hope I never have to, but most things are like that. And doing your book, I mean, that transition from the day before your book comes out until the day that you become a bestseller, it will be kind of addictive. I know a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm ready to write my next book now.
That's so cool that you have those case studies like that, right? Because that's so important. And you continue to spit those out, which is amazing. And I know even for myself, whenever I wrote my ebook and released it on Amazon, I wish I had a service like yours, or at least knew of it, because I was so stubborn and built like a street team and stuff like that pushed it out. And yeah, we were number one in one category. I think it was vocational rehabilitation or something like that, new release within 24 hours. But it could have been a hell of a lot more successful if I was leveraging a service like yours for all the obvious reasons. But us Marines, we can be super stubborn sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and the important part about it is unlike would have been in the 1970s, these days, actually a marketing campaign starts with bestseller. So that's day one of the campaign. You don't do a year-long process to build up to that. You literally just launch right out, and day one, you make the book a bestseller, and then build all the rest of whatever you do in marketing, which may or may not specifically, involve one-off sales of the book. You build all that off of bestseller rather than getting to it eventually.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point, right? Building the marketing around it and leveraging your experience with that. So the ambitious vet can just leverage their content, which is their expertise, right? Just focus on the content. You build the marketing plan around, so the book can go off the way it needs to be. And I know Amazon has a crazy algorithm on how to go bestseller. And I don't know if you want to dive into that or kind of tease them with it. And if they want to know more, they can, reach out to you and learn more about just having a hand-guided process to make that happen. But what would be something that you could tease an ambitious vet to potentially be like, hey, this is how you beat the Amazon algorithm to go bestseller in a category, one or three categories, right?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of things, and it is all Amazon, first of all. And I always talk about the Amazon bestseller list because it's the only statistically driven list. New York Times, for example, is just a reflection of big box purchases. Doesn't necessarily mean any of the books were or weren't bought by a person. Just means Walmart bought a whole big bunch of them.
Interesting.
That's what the New York Times list is. Amazon is based off of sales, meaning that an end user purchased the book. They can even go further than that when you talk ebook, and they can even tell you, X number of pages were read in the book. But looking at just basically the basic sales thing, what I can tell you algorithmically is that a tiny number, 10 sales in an hour, is the equivalent mathematically, statistically, of over 200 sales in a day, which is statistically more than 6,000 in a month, and extrapolate that out to a year. If you have a book that sells 5,000 copies over the course of, say a 3-day pre-launch, which a lot of people do, which is not good, you may not have had 5,000 stretched out over 3 months. You may not have ever had an hour that was 10. And so a number as small as 10 can actually make your book algorithmically more popular. And Amazon's list does update every hour, so it's more volatile than, the twice a year New York Times bestseller list, but it's also much more accurate. When you look at it, you're seeing what book was number one, 6, 8 hours, 12 hours ago, or 24 to 36 hours ago if you're looking international Amazons.
Right. No, that's great. And thanks for breaking that down. And I think for ambitious vets that get out and can be overly ambitious, they want that New York Times, first book. And sometimes the Amazon bestsellers are kind of, the next step towards getting to potentially a New York Times and lump sum sales. So, hey, if you can become an Amazon bestseller, you can become a New York Times one day. But thank you for having it that algorithm break down, because I don't think a lot of us understand that the statistics are more transparent and they're individual sales driven of individuals purchasing it and stuff like that. That's a great point.
Let's talk for just a second about New York Times, because, and you'll forgive me if it's a little bit of a fly in the ointment for me, but first of all, it's going to cost you about $200,000 or $300,000 to be you or your publisher, about $200,000 or $300,000 to make it onto the New York Times bestseller list. And, we could spend the rest of the day talking about actual cases of people up to and including, there was a girl who 2 years ago now was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and they took it back. And the reason being is because they found out they just buy the list from Nielsen, the same company that does the ratings for TV shows. And when they found out that her rating was based off of having gone to Comic-Cons and sold the books individually rather than the big box retailers, they deemed those as being quote unquote not real sales. And they removed her they repealed her bestseller. And yeah, and like you said, we could go on and on about it. So even with the $200,000 or $300,000 per expense that it is going to cost you, because you have to fund the creation of all of those books up front with a 90-day net pay and the right for them to return any and all of the books, which means they tear the front cover off of or take the sleeve, depending on whether it's hardcover or soft cover. That's all you get back. And then they sell the actual book to a third-party vendor as a used book. So, you could spend $200,000 or $300,000 and still not be on that list. And if you do, it just really only says, Walmart bought a bunch of them. It doesn't really say anything about what impact your book had.
Really? That's an interesting metric. Thanks for breaking that down. I think that's important for us all to know, for aspiring thought leaders and authors, creators, and all that good stuff. So thanks for breaking that down. Steve, I definitely wish that we could be doing this all day. Definitely a wealth of knowledge, dropping golden grenade after golden grenade. But let's kind of wrap this up with one last golden grenade, and then we'll give you a call to action for the ambitious vets to go learn more about your services and yourself. But here's the thing: is there's an ambitious vet in the trenches of life right now that is feeling, unsatisfied or unfulfilled in life. They've been out for a few years, realized those immediate transitional tools are pretty much, they expire, right? Like we all kind of realize as we get out of the uniform, it's been a couple of years in the trenches in the marketplace. But what would be one last golden grenade to help fuel an ambitious vet's desire to become more and ultimately achieve it?
The thing that you went through, that one thing, and especially with veterans, this is so true, that you had that moment where you weren't sure whether tomorrow was going to come. That thing that you're afraid to share is probably more than anything the thing that somebody needs, and more so what you learned of having gone through and survived that. The things we go through in life often aren't fun to go through, but on the other side of it, what we need to learn is that the reason why God allowed us to go through them is for the benefit that's going to come on the backside of that, whether it's that immediate victory of that particular thing, or it be the victory in people's lives ongoingly. And so we really do need to share those things in order to make that impact that they're really intended for to begin with.
That's amazing. Steve, where can people go find out more about what you're up to, the services that you provide, and just to get more connected with you in the trenches of life?
So, the easiest thing, of course, is my website. It's thrivingbestsellers.com. I do also have the Facebook group, Thriving Bestsellers. And if you want to just talk to me, you just go to askstevekid.com and hop onto my schedule. I'd be glad to talk to anybody, even if you're just contemplating it. Anything I can do to help, I'd be glad to.
That's awesome. Well, Ambitious Vet, I definitely just encourage you to go check out Steve. Everything that he's doing, I see him at least once a month on the Reform Networking events, and he's just dropping value bomb after value bomb on how to become a best-selling author within 90 days. If you're willing to do the work, why not leverage his 30 plus years of marketing experience and, get out there and accelerate your impact, right? I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. So Steve, just thank you for joining the show. Thank you for what you're doing for veterans. And until next time, hold the vision and trust the process. Take care.
The Ambitious Vet is available on all popular podcast platforms. Go to vettrainingcoaching.com to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow vets.
Ambitious Vet, before you go, make sure you go check out www.audibletrial.com/AV podcast. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/A as in Alpha, V as in Victor podcast to try out your free 30-day trial with Audible on us, where you're going to get to choose from over thousands of titles, anywhere from self-improvement, guided wellness, and other Audible originals that you could be having outlets in your drive time to work, driving to a networking event, or just walking the dog on a daily basis. I find that putting Audible in my daily routine helps me continue to be consuming content that helps me stay relevant, stay informed inside the marketplace I'm trying to improve on, or just always consuming some Kevin Hart stuff that makes me laugh. Regardless of what your cup of tea is, Audible's got it. Again, that's audibletrial.com /AV podcast.